Hello, and welcome to the class. My name's Paddy. Today, we're going to look at process diagrams for IELTS Academic Writing Task 1. If you have any questions after the video, you can click on the chat icon at the top of your page. Send us a message with any questions that you have after this video. This is the first class of 2 classes. This video will last just over 20 minutes. First, we're going to look at how to understand the question for process diagrams. Then we're going to look at some useful language for your reports. By the end of this video, you will be more aware of how to understand and write about this type of question. During the class, there'll be some questions for you to answer. You can find these below the video. I will tell you when you need to answer these questions, and I will give you 10 to 15 seconds to answer them. Okay, let's get started. So, what are process diagrams? Process diagrams show the steps or the stages of a process. This process could be a natural one, or it could be a mechanical one, like a machine, or maybe it shows a manufacturing process, like in a factory. Process diagrams usually don't have much data, numbers, or figures, so it's different to other types of Task 1 question. They show images, and it's about understanding the relationship between those images. When you write your answer, it can be useful to include things such as passives to make your language more impersonal, linking language of sequencing to show the order of events, and linking language of cause and effect to show the relationship between the stages of the process. So, what do we do when we see this type of question? We need to understand what the diagram shows and all of the stages of this diagram. So the first thing we have to do is read the question. The question will usually contain a description of the diagram with some key language that we need to use in our answers. Understanding this description is really important because we can paraphrase it for our introduction. We need to understand how many diagrams there are. Sometimes there will be only one diagram showing many stages of a process. Sometimes there might be 2 different diagrams which we need to compare and contrast. It's important to know where the process is happening. So is it happening inside the human body? Is it happening in a factory? Is it happening in the natural world? By understanding the location of the process, it will help you be clear about what is going on. We also need to think about whether the process is a cyclical one or a linear one. So a cyclical process repeats itself, and a linear process has a clear start and finish. For example, look at the diagram on your screen. Do you think this is a cyclical process or a linear process? Look at the question below the video and choose the correct option, cyclical or linear. This is a cyclical process, so we can't see an obvious start point or an obvious finish point. We need to identify how many stages are in the diagram. So we're only looking for the main stages of the process. Again, look at the diagram on your screen and decide how many stages are there in this diagram. Is it 2, 3, or 6? Look at the question below the video and choose the correct option. So there are 3 stages in this process, 1, 2, and 3. The arrows are not stages, they just connect those 3 stages. It's important to think about where this process starts and finishes. So if it's a linear process, it's easy to see the first stage and the final stage. With a cyclical process like this one, we have to decide where to begin and where to finish. For example, if you're looking at the life cycle of an animal, then a good place to start maybe would be the birth of the animal. You should think about whether you can compare and contrast things in the diagram. So if there are 2 diagrams, then look for features which are similar and look for features which are different. If there is only 1 diagram, then you want to be looking for differences between the stages or similarities between the stages. Finally, it's important to notice the labels and headings in the diagram. So these are the words which tell you what things are or what is happening. Sometimes these labels might refer to things, objects, nouns. Sometimes these labels might refer to actions, activities, verbs. You can use this language in your answer, so it's very important to understand what they mean. Now, let's look at an example. The first thing we do with a question like this is, of course, to read the question. The diagram below shows the manufacturing process for porcelain dinner plates. So we can see manufacturing process. So this tells us it's about making something. So we should be thinking it's probably man-made, possibly in a factory. The object is porcelain dinner plates. Well, we maybe don't know the word porcelain, but we can tell the meaning from dinner plates. We probably recognize some of those words. Let's look at the diagram. The first thing to think about is how many diagrams are there on screen? Look at the next question below this video and choose the correct option. Is there 1 diagram, 3 diagrams, or 8 diagrams? Choose your answer. So this is just 1 diagram. There are many stages in this diagram, but only 1 diagram overall. So we're just looking at 1 process. The next question we should think about is the location. Where does this process take place? Look at the next question below this video and choose 2 correct answers from the ground, the natural world, the sky, inside the human body, or a factory. This process takes place in the ground or from a mine in the first stage, and the other stages seem to happen in a factory. The next question we should think about is, of course, is it a linear process or a cyclical process? Remember, a linear process has a start and a finish. A cyclical process repeats itself. So is this a cyclical or linear process? Look at the question below the video and choose the correct option, cyclical or linear. This is a linear process. So the first stage is the extraction of kaolinite, and then at the end we can see finished dinner plates. There is no repetition. The material is not reused in the first process. It is a clear start and a clear finish. We need to think about how many stages there are in this diagram. Again, we're looking for main stages, not small details, but the main stages of this process. So again, look at the question below this video, and can you choose the correct number of stages? Is it 1 stage, 6 stages, 7 stages, or 8 stages? Choose the correct option. There are 6 stages in this diagram. We can see this because of the headings: the extraction of kaolinite, mixing, cutting, molding, glazing, and firing. The other images are not necessarily stages by themselves. We also should think about how we can compare these stages. So we could look at the location of the first 2. We could think about the shape of the material as it changes, as it moves between the machines. Noticing little things like these can help us build up an overall idea of what we should be talking about. Using those headings and labels, we can provide some vocabulary for our answers. So let's think about how we can do that. Here, I have taken some of the labels and headings from the diagram. I can copy this language, or even better, I can change the verb form to make it suit my answer. So for example, manufacturing, we can get the verb manufacture, to make something, or factory, the place where we make something. From extraction, I can get the word extract as a verb. Mixing, of course, we get the verb mix and the noun mixture. Cutting, of course, comes from the verb cut. Now, molding, maybe we don't understand the meaning of it, but we can see the ing. So from this, we can assume there is a verb mold. There is also a noun, mold, and the verb press, which we get from molding press. From glazing, again, we get the verb glaze, and from firing, we get the verb fire. You may not understand all of the vocabulary in the diagram, but it's good to try and use it if possible, because it shows that you can adapt language to suit your needs. Here we have an example answer from a student. They have written a paragraph describing the process we saw in the previous diagram. On the left are some of the verbs we took from those labels and headings. Which verbs has this student used in their answer? Look at the question below this video and choose the verbs which this student has used in their paragraph. So this student has used the verbs extract, mix, cut, and press. They have not used all of the language from the diagrams, and they have also included some other verbs from their own personal experience and knowledge. This is a good answer, but there is a small problem with this answer. The problem comes with the word people in the first sentence. If you think about the diagram, there are no people in the diagram. We don't see who is doing the actions. For this reason, it's best to use passive forms when we don't see who or what is doing the action. Read this paragraph again and decide which verbs should we change into passive because we don't see who or what is doing it. Look at the next question below this video and choose the verbs which we could change into passive because we don't see who or what is doing it. Choose 4 options now. So the verbs we should change into passive are extract, because again, we don't see the people who do the extraction. Transport, so we can't say they transport, we have to change this to passive. Mix, it says the workers mix it. We don't see these workers, so we can't say this. And finally, push. It says, then the machines push. We don't actually see the machines or know the names of the machines in this diagram. The other verbs in this paragraph, we know the name of the machine which does it, so it's okay to keep it in active, not passive. So let's change this paragraph. Here is the same paragraph, but this time we have used passive forms. In the first sentence, we can see has been extracted. This is better than the active form from the previous example. It is transported. Okay, we're talking about the kaolinite or the clay. We're not talking about people or who does these actions. And we have it is mixed. So these passive forms are a lot more academic sounding, and they avoid saying who does these actions. Next, I'd like to think about sequencing language. This is language that gives us the order of the stages or steps in the process. They show the relationship with time. In this example from a student, they have used 3 examples of sequencing language. We have once, then, which can be used at the start of a sentence or inside a passive form. So the clay is then pushed through a tube. And we have next, which is used at the start of a sentence. It's good to have as much of this vocabulary as possible going into the exam to build up a bank of these words. So we should think of some synonyms. After that, when, and subsequently. These synonyms match the meanings of once, then, and next. But which word do they match the meaning of? Look at the next question and choose the words which have a similar meaning in this example paragraph. Match the letter to the number. Choose the correct options now. Right. Once has a similar meaning to when in this example. So we can say when the kaolinite has been extracted, it is transported. Then can be replaced with subsequently. So this is a much more formal word. This clay is subsequently pushed through a tube. Next can be replaced with after that. So after that, a conveyor belt transports the pieces of clay. It's good to avoid repeating yourself with the same sequencing language, so try to learn as much of these phrases as you can. Now I'd like to look at some linking language of cause and effect. Here we see a student's answer to a question about the difference in wind direction between the day and the night. This student has used some really good linking language to show the cause and effect. Look at the question below this video, and from the list, can you choose the 5 examples of linking language of cause and effect that this student has used in their paragraph? Choose the correct options from the list. So the linking language of cause and effect that this student has used is causing, so causing the air to become hotter. As a result, which introduces a result of the previous stage. So, which again gives a consequence or result. This means that, another expression to show the result of the previous stage. And we have this is due to, which explains the cause of something. So again, we have a good mix of different linking phrases of cause and effect here. We're not repeating ourselves. There are some diagrams where this language will be appropriate, where the stages result in each other or affect each other. But there are some diagrams where there is no cause-effect relationship between the stages, so you should not use this language. That is the end of this class. If you have any questions, remember you can click on that chat icon at the top of your page. Now you should take class 2 on this topic and do the extra training and practice activities on the topic. Thank you for listening.